They noticed my limp before they noticed my name. That's how the night started. That's how most nights started. The ER doors slid open at 10:41 p.m., and I felt the shift change energy hit me all at once. Exhaustion, irritation, coffee gone cold, patience already spent. My left leg dragged just slightly as I stepped inside, not enough to slow me down, but enough for people to see. Enough for people to judge. Someone near the triage desk smirked. Another nurse leaned in and whispered something I didn't need to hear clearly to understand. Night shift really gets the broken ones. I kept walking. My badge bounced lightly against my chest. Night nurse trauma intake. To them, that badge didn't mean experience. It meant leftovers. It meant someone management stuck on nights because days didn't want to deal with her. I didn't correct them. I didn't explain the limp. I didn't explain anything. Silence has always been safer than truth. The ER was loud. Monitors chirping, gurney wheels screaming against tile, a man yelling in pain somewhere behind the curtain line. I clocked in, grabbed gloves, and moved toward intake like I always did. Calm, quiet, invisible, that's what they thought I was, invisible. A resident brushed past me and muttered, "Careful, don't trip," like it was a joke. His friend laughed, not cruel laughter, worse, casual laughter. The kind that assumes you don't matter enough to fight back. I smiled politely. I always smiled. By midnight, they'd already decided my role for the night. Stay out of the way. Fetch supplies. Don't make calls. At 12:18 a.m., a surgeon waved me back from a trauma bay and said, "We don't need you slowing things down." At 12:52 a.m., another nurse reassigned my patient without asking. "She's better with the quiet stuff," she said, quiet. They had no idea how loud quiet could be. I took vitals, logged charts, cleaned blood off the floor like it was nothing. Inside, my head was doing what it always did under pressure, tracking patterns, counting breaths, reading rooms. Old habits don't die just because you stop wearing a uniform. At 1:37 a.m., the ambulance doors burst open. Male, mid-30s, severe trauma, blood everywhere. The second I saw him, something tightened in my chest, not fear, recognition. His breathing was wrong, shallow, uneven, fighting against something deeper than surface wounds. His eyes were glassy but alert, too alert for someone losing that much blood. I stepped forward. "I've got it," the attending snapped without looking at me. I stepped back, not because I agreed, because I knew when to wait. I stayed close enough to see what the monitors weren't showing yet. His blood pressure dipped, then dipped again. The room grew tense, voices overlapping, orders flying fast but missing the mark. I watched his hands. The tremor wasn't shock, it was pain, internal, hidden. I opened my mouth again. "Doctor," he cut me off. "Stay in your lane," so I stayed, but I didn't leave. Because leaving is how people die. At 2:11 a.m., his pulse went erratic. Someone cursed. Another nurse scrambled for meds. The surgeon argued with anesthesia. Everyone was loud. Everyone was wrong. I moved in without asking, adjusted pressure where it mattered, shifted his position just enough to ease the strain. Spoke to him low, steady, like I'd done 100 times before in places far away from this hospital. "Stay with me," I said. "Breathe slow." His eyes flicked toward mine. And then he whispered something so quiet no one else heard it. "Angel." My hands froze. I hadn't heard that name spoken out loud in years. Before I could react, the floor began to hum. At first, I thought it was just another ambulance. Then the vibration grew deeper, heavier, not tires, not engines, rotors. My spine went cold. The lights overhead trembled. Ceiling panels rattled like they were nervous. Someone at the nurse's station looked up and said, "Do you feel that?" Then security ran past the glass doors, shouting into a radio, panic bleeding into his voice. "We've got aircraft incoming, multiple, this isn't medical." The hum became thunder, windows shook, and suddenly the ER felt very small. A charge nurse yelled, "Why are there Army helicopters landing outside our hospital?" No one answered. Over the intercom, a calm voice cut through the chaos, controlled, authoritative, unmistakable. "This is United States Army Command." Every sound died. "We are requesting immediate access to Angel 6. Time stopped. Doctors froze mid-movement. Nurses stared at each other. Someone whispered, "Who?" My heart didn't race, it locked, because I knew exactly who they were asking for, and I knew this night was about to change everything. I wasn't always a night nurse. Once, nights meant something entirely different. Back then, darkness didn't hide mistakes. It demanded perfection. It hid danger, yes, but it also exposed you if you weren't ready. Every step could cost a life, yours or someone else's. I learned to move without sound, to breathe without panic, to think clearly when everything screamed chaos. I learned to survive without applause. To be unseen, unnoticed, until my work spoke for itself. But here, inside this ER, I was seen all right, just not in the way that mattered. The staff already had their opinions about me before I even started my shift. Some were polite, some were dismissive. Most assumed the limp meant weakness. None of them knew what that limp had cost me, the surgeries I'd done under fire, the soldiers I'd pulled out while bullets screamed past my head, the people I'd carried to safety while my own body screamed to stop. That history stayed buried, and I intended to keep it that way. I walked past the nurse's station, gloves in hand, and felt the familiar gaze of judgment following me. A resident muttered something under his breath as I passed. "She looks like she shouldn't be here," I smiled politely. Silence is safer than explanation. The first trauma call came fast. A young man involved in a multi-car accident, unconscious, bleeding life, slipping through his fingers faster than the EMTs could stabilize him. I moved to assist, offering suggestions, quietly giving orders. Each suggestion was met with skepticism or outright dismissal. "You don't need to touch that," a surgeon snapped, waving me away. I stepped back, but only slightly. Because stepping back didn't mean inaction. I stayed close. I observed. I anticipated the next move. I adjusted IV lines, monitored vitals, and prepped equipment before anyone even realized it was needed. This was instinct, honed over years in environments far removed from any hospital. I was a night nurse here, yes, but I was trained for situations no hospital could simulate. By midnight, the ER had filled up. Ambulances brought in victims of car accidents, overdoses, fights, chaos layered upon chaos. The staff was running ragged, snapping at each other, voices raised. The panic was subtle, masked under a veneer of professionalism, but I could read it, I could feel it, I thrived in it. That's when a man was wheeled in, a middle-aged construction worker with severe abdominal trauma. His vitals were unstable, and his body language screamed impending collapse. The doctor in charge waved me away. "I've got it," he said. I nodded and stepped back. But I didn't stop analyzing, didn't stop moving quietly to anticipate his needs. My hands hovered over supplies, ready to act. I monitored the monitors, read the subtle cues of shock in his eyes and hands. Every instinct screamed that he needed help fast. As I prepared a pressure dressing, another nurse whispered to a colleague, "Why is she even here? She's just the injured one." Injured, that's all they saw. The limp, the slow step, the quiet voice. They didn't see the countless times I'd done what was impossible under fire. They didn't see the soldier who'd saved lives while her own body betrayed her. They couldn't, and that was fine. It kept my identity hidden. A subtle change in the man's breathing told me his condition was worsening. I leaned closer, my voice low but firm. "Internal hemorrhage." "He's crashing." A resident barked at me to step aside. I didn't, because stepping aside now meant letting him die, and I wasn't going to let that happen. Not here, not ever. I worked quietly, efficiently. My hands moved without hesitation, pressure applied in precise locations. Oxygen adjusted, airway managed. I whispered instructions only I needed him to hear. Slowly, methodically, I stabilized him enough to buy time. Someone in the corner gasped. "How does she know that?" I didn't answer, I couldn't. My lips pressed into a thin line, my mind focused entirely on keeping him alive. My body remembered drills, patterns, sequences learned in battlefields across the world. This wasn't a hospital skill. This was survival, minutes stretched. Monitors beeped faster than my heart. Surgeons argued about the next move. Staff hustled in all directions. I stayed focused, calm, precise, and then I heard it. A low vibration beneath my feet. A thrum that didn't belong to machinery or nearby traffic. Windows rattled, ceiling panels trembled, the air pressure shifted. Something was approaching, something big. At first, no one noticed. They were too wrapped up in chaos, in life and death. But I did, my body tensed, my instincts screamed, rotors, military rotors, and then the voice came, calm, authoritative. Through the intercom over the chaos. "This is United States Army Command. We are requesting immediate access to Angel 6. The room froze. Every movement stalled mid-step. Conversations died in throats. Eyes turned toward me. Time slowed. And just like that, the quiet night nurse became the center of everything. The room didn't explode into chaos right away. It froze. That's what people don't expect. When something unbelievable happens, there's always that first second where nobody moves, like the world needs permission to keep spinning. The intercom clicked off, leaving behind a silence so heavy it pressed against my ears. The monitors were still beeping. The patient was still breathing, barely. But every human in that room stood perfectly still, trying to process what they'd just heard. "Angel 6, someone whispered. The surgeon frowned, clearly annoyed. "Who is that?" "Why is Army Command calling our ER?" No one answered him. I didn't answer either. I kept my hands exactly where they were, applying pressure, controlling bleeding, doing the one thing I'd always done best, keeping someone alive while everyone else argued. The charge nurse recovered first. "Security, what's going on outside?" She snapped into her radio. The reply came back shaky. "Ma'am, there are multiple military helicopters on approach. Soldiers are setting a perimeter." A resident laughed nervously. "This has to be some kind of mistake." Mistake, I swallowed. I'd prayed for mistakes before. Prayed radios would malfunction. Prayed coordinates were wrong. Prayed names didn't get called. But the Army doesn't make mistakes like this. Not with helicopters, not with call signs. The patient on the gurney shifted slightly. His fingers twitched, weak but deliberate. His eyes fluttered open again, finding mine like he was holding onto the last solid thing in the room. "Angel 6, he breathed. "You're real." I leaned closer, my voice low, steady, the way it always had to be. "Focus on me, don't talk, save your strength." The surgeon noticed. "What did he just say?" "Nothing important," I replied, not looking up. That earned me a sharp look. "Excuse me." I finally met his eyes, calm, unapologetic. "He needs surgery now." "If we wait, he won't make it," he bristled. "And you know that how?" I didn't answer, because how do you explain instinct forged in war to someone who's never felt it? The ground trembled again, stronger this time. The sound was unmistakable now, deep, chopping air, powerful enough to make the IV poles rattle. Someone near the entrance swore under their breath. Through the glass doors, flashing lights painted the hallway in brief bursts of white and red. Shadows moved fast and precise, not frantic, not confused, military. The charge nurse's voice cracked. "Why would the Army be here for a nurse?" That question hit harder than she realized. For years, I'd worked to become just a nurse, to shrink myself into something that fit inside hospital walls, to convince myself that I could live quietly, that the past would stay where I buried it. But the past has a way of finding you. The doors slammed open. Cold air rushed in, carrying with it the smell of fuel and rain. Boots hit the floor in perfect rhythm, measured, disciplined. Soldiers poured into the ER, weapons lowered but ready, eyes scanning every corner with lethal calm. No one spoke. The surgeon took an unconscious step back. I recognized the formation instantly. Muscle memory kicked in before thought. I straightened slightly, shifting my weight despite the pain in my leg. Old posture, old reflex. A man at the front of the group raised a hand, signaling his unit to halt. He wasn't flashy. No shouting. No drama. Authority clung to him like a second skin. His eyes swept the room once. Then they locked onto me. Everything else disappeared. He stopped walking. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to just the two of us, standing across from each other like we were back somewhere dusty and dangerous, somewhere far from clean floors and fluorescent lights. Slowly, deliberately, he came to attention, and then he saluted. "Permission to approach, ma'am." The word echoed through the like a gunshot. "Ma'am," the surgeon's mouth fell open. A nurse gasped. Someone actually dropped a tray, metal clattering loudly against tile, but no one reacted. Every eye was fixed on me. I didn't return the salute. Not yet. "Stand down," I said quietly. The commander obeyed instantly. That alone shattered whatever reality the staff thought they were in. The surgeon stammered, "What the hell is going on?" The commander didn't look at him. "We were told Angel 6 was here." Silence. I finally stepped away from the gurney, slowly, carefully. The limp was obvious now, no hiding it. I met the commander's gaze. "You found me," I said. Relief flickered across his face before discipline locked it down. "Yes, ma'am. We tracked the medevac code from the field. He kept asking for you." The patient's breathing hitched. "Told you," he whispered. "She always comes back." The surgeon looked between us, pale. You know each other," the commander answered before I could. "She saved his life 3 years ago." Kandahar province, took shrapnel pulling him out under fire. Every head snapped toward me. I felt it then, the weight of it, the stares, the shift in the room. The quiet nurse wasn't quiet anymore. The injured one wasn't just injured. The pieces were falling into place whether I wanted them to or not. The charge nurse swallowed hard. "You're military?" I shook my head slightly. "Not anymore. But you were," the surgeon said, voice tight. "Yes." He looked down at the patient, then back at me. "Why didn't you say something?" "Because saying something changes everything. Because once people know they stop seeing you, they see the story." "I wasn't asked," I replied. The commander stepped closer. "Ma'am, we need him stabilized for immediate transfer." I glanced at the monitors, then at the surgeon. "He won't survive transport yet. He needs surgery. Now." The surgeon hesitated. The commander's voice hardened just enough to be unmistakable. "Doctor, she's not guessing." That did it. The surgeon nodded sharply. "Prep the OR." The room snapped back to life, but it was different now. Focused, controlled. Every order I gave was followed without question. No eye rolls, no whispers, just movement. As they wheeled the gurney away, the commander fell into step beside me. "You didn't tell them who you were." "I didn't need to," I said. He studied me for a moment. "You never do." The rotors continued to thunder outside. And I knew this was only the beginning. The OR doors swung shut behind us, sealing out the noise of the ER, but not the tension. If anything, it thickened in the sterile air, heavy and unspoken. Everyone moved fast now, too fast, like speed could make sense of what had just happened. I scrubbed in without a word. Muscle memory guided my hands, every motion precise, practiced. The surgical tech glanced at me once, then twice, like she was trying to reconcile the quiet nurse she'd ignored an hour ago with the woman a military commander had just saluted. No one spoke to me like an assistant anymore. The surgeon cleared his throat. "All right," he said, forcing confidence into his voice. He's going to crash when you open," I said calmly. The room paused. The anesthesiologist looked up. "What?" "Internal bleed isn't where you think it is," I continued, eyes on the patient's vitals. "If you cut there first, you'll lose him," the surgeon bristled. "You're not the attending here." I met his gaze, not aggressive, not apologetic. "I know." The monitors beeped faster, like they were siding with me, a drop in pressure. Another, the surgeon hesitated. That hesitation was new. An hour ago, he wouldn't have given my words a second thought. Now, with soldiers outside and a commander watching through the OR window, doubt had crept in. "Where is it?" he asked, quieter. I pointed. "There, shrapnel track, old injury reopened by impact." "How do you—" "I've seen it before," he nodded sharply. "Do it your way." We opened. Blood flooded the field exactly when I said it would. The anesthesiologist swore. The surgical tech scrambled. For a split second, panic threatened to take over. "Pressure," I said. Now they listened. I guided them through it, my voice steady, almost soft, like I was talking someone down from the edge. Every movement had a purpose. Every second mattered. The patient stabilized barely. A breath went through the room. The surgeon looked at me, something like awe flickering across his face before pride slammed the door shut. "You should have said something earlier." I didn't answer, because this wasn't about credit, it was about survival. Outside the OR, I could see the commander through the glass, arms folded, posture relaxed but alert. He wasn't interfering, he never did. He trusted me, always had. That trust was heavier than any rank. When the surgery ended and the patient was wheeled into recovery, alive against the odds, the OR staff stood there in stunned silence. No celebration. Just processing, the surgeon finally broke it. "Why are you here?" There it was, the question everyone wanted answered. I peeled off my gloves slowly. "Because I can help." "That's not what I meant," he said. "With your background, you could be anywhere." Anywhere but here, he meant, anywhere that made sense. "I chose this," I replied. "And I chose not to talk about my past." "Why?" "Because my past is loud, because my past follows you, because my past doesn't let you be just a nurse." "I wanted quiet," I said. He exhaled, rubbing his temples. "You realize this changes things?" Yes, it already had. Word spread fast, faster than I expected. By the time I stepped back into the ER, people were looking at me differently. Conversations stopped when I passed. Nurses straightened up. Doctors nodded, some respectfully, some stiffly. Not everyone was impressed. A senior attending cornered me near the supply room. "You embarrassed my team." I held his gaze. "I saved your patient. That's not the point." No, I said softly. That's exactly the point. He walked away without another word. The commander approached as the noise outside finally began to fade. Helicopters powered down one by one, the thunder replaced by an eerie quiet. "You all right?" he asked. "I will be." "You always are," he said, then hesitated. "They're asking questions. I know, you don't owe them answers." I looked around the ER at the people who had laughed, ignored, dismissed me. At the ones who were now whispering, speculating, building a version of me they could understand. "I owe them professionalism," I said. "Nothing more," he nodded. "For what it's worth, they're alive because of you." "I know," I replied. That was the problem, I always knew. As the night stretched on, more patients came in. The ER didn't slow down just because my past had shown up uninvited. I went back to work, back to being a nurse. But the balance was gone. Every move I made was watched. Every word weighed. The quiet had turned into a spotlight, and I hated it. Near dawn, the charge nurse approached me carefully. "Administration wants to talk to you in the morning." Of course they did. "About what?" I asked. She hesitated. "Your history," I nodded. "I'll be here." She studied me for a moment. "You could have let him die, no one would have known." "Yes," I said. "But I would have." She swallowed. As the sun began to rise, casting pale light through the ER windows, exhaustion settled into my bones, not physical, emotional. The kind that comes from carrying two lives at once, the one you live now and the one you used to be. I leaned against the wall, weight off my bad leg, and closed my eyes for just a second. I knew this wasn't over. The helicopters might be gone, but the fallout was just beginning. By morning, the ER looked the same, but it felt nothing like it had before. Sunlight crept in through the high windows, pale and tired, like it didn't want to be there either. The night shift energy was gone, replaced by the sterile calm of day staff walking in with fresh coffee and half-formed assumptions. Word had spread. I could tell by the way conversations stopped when I passed, by the way eyes followed me a second longer than necessary. I hated it. I'd worked hard to become invisible here. To be just another nurse doing her job, now I was something else, something they were trying to label. Hero, veteran, Angel 6. None of those fit anymore. Administration called me in just after shift change. A glass-walled office overlooking the ER floor, the kind of room designed so you never forget who's watching. The hospital director sat behind the desk, fingers steepled. Legal was there too, human resources, too many people for a simple conversation. "Thank you for coming in," the director said. "We wanted to talk about last night." I nodded and sat down carefully, my leg protesting as I did. No one offered help. No one offered water. They weren't here to take care of me. "We've reviewed the incident," he continued. "What you did was extraordinary. But," legal cut in smoothly, "there are concerns." Of course there were. "You acted beyond your scope," she said. "You gave orders to physicians." "I gave information," I replied. "They chose to listen. That's not how policy sees it." Policy had never stopped bleeding before. HR leaned forward. "Why didn't you disclose your military background during hiring?" "Because you didn't ask." "I disclosed what was required," I said evenly. Silence stretched. The director sighed. "You put us in a difficult position." I almost laughed. "I saved a patient," I said, "and several doctors' careers." No one smiled. "We're placing you on administrative leave pending review," HR said gently, like that made it better. "Paid, temporary." Temporary had a way of becoming permanent. I nodded. "Understood." As I stood to leave, the director added, "For what it's worth, the Army has contacted us. They were very complimentary." I paused. "That won't change policy." "No," he admitted. "But it changes optics." Optics. I walked out without another word. Back in the ER, the day staff pretended not to stare. The night crew avoided my eyes. The charge nurse looked like she wanted to say something but didn't know how. I gathered my things quietly. Locker closed, badge unclipped. As I headed for the exit, the surgeon from the night before caught up to me. "They're benching you? For now. That's ridiculous." I met his gaze. "It's predictable." He hesitated. "I was wrong about you." "I know." He flinched at that, but I wasn't being cruel, just honest. Outside, the air was cool and smelled like rain. The parking lot was emptying, night staff heading home, day staff arriving. Normal life continued like nothing had happened. I stood there for a moment, breathing it in. Then the pain hit. Not physical, not the leg, the weight. I'd spent years building this quiet life brick by brick. One night, one helicopter, and it was all exposed. I felt raw, unarmored. I didn't go home, I drove. No destination, just movement. The road blurred under my tires as memories pressed in sand, heat, radios crackling, the weight of bodies in my arms. Faces I'd tried to forget. Angel 6. I hated that name, loved it once. But it belonged to a version of me that no longer existed. My phone buzzed, unknown number, I almost ignored it. "Ma'am," a familiar voice said when I answered. "The commander, they're pushing back, aren't they?" "Yes, I can make this easier." "No," I said immediately. "Don't." A pause. "You always were stubborn." "I want this to be my choice," he exhaled. "Understood, but know this, we're not walking away." After the call, I pulled over and finally let myself feel it. The anger, the exhaustion. The grief for a life I'd tried to leave behind and couldn't. I cried, quietly, briefly. Then I wiped my face and drove home. By evening, the news had picked up the story, not names, just headlines. Army helicopters divert to save wounded soldier at local hospital. Mysterious nurse credited with life-saving intervention. Mysterious. That night, someone knocked on my door. Two men stood outside, suits, polite, official. "Captain," one said before correcting himself. "Sorry, nurse," I crossed my arms. "You're late." They exchanged a look. "We're here because someone filed a complaint." Of course they were. As they spoke about protocols, boundaries, liability, I realized something. This wasn't about what I'd done wrong. It was about what I'd done right, and how much it scared them. When they left, the house felt too quiet. I sat alone in the dark, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic. For the first time since I'd left the service, I felt truly unmoored. I'd thought I could outrun my past. Turns out it was waiting patiently. The twist didn't arrive with sirens. It came quietly, too quietly. The next morning, my phone stayed silent. No calls from the hospital, no messages from administration, no follow-ups from the suits who'd knocked on my door. Silence like that is never peace. It's a pause before impact. I was halfway through reheating coffee when my tablet lit up with a notification from a secure channel I hadn't used in years. The icon alone made my chest tighten. Priority, VERIFIED from, Joint Medical Command. I stared at it. I hadn't logged into that network since I signed my discharge papers. I was sure my credentials were dead. Apparently, they were. The message was short. "Angel 6 status reactivated pending consent. Please review attached." My hand shook as I opened the file. It wasn't just a report. It was a timeline, footage, transcripts. Medical telemetry from last night. And then my name. Not the civilian one I'd been using, my real one, rank included. I sank into the chair. They hadn't just noticed what happened in the ER. They de-reconstructed it, minute by minute. The helicopters hadn't diverted randomly. The soldier on that gurney, he wasn't just wounded. He was carrying classified biometric data in his bloodstream, experimental nanomedical monitoring, still under trial. When his vitals crashed, the system flagged a catastrophic failure and triggered an automated contingency. Find Angel 6, not because I was famous. Because I was on a short, terrifying list of people trained to keep that system alive under combat conditions. The nurse supervisor who mocked my limp, the surgeon who rolled his eyes. They had no idea the patient on their table was part of something the Pentagon didn't even fully understand yet. And neither did I, until now. My phone rang. This time I recognized the number. "This isn't supposed to happen," the commander said without greeting. "You reactivated me," I replied. "That's exactly what happened. We didn't expect civilian interference." I almost laughed. "You mean me? You weren't supposed to be there." "I work there." A pause, then softer. "I know." He explained the rest. The soldier's condition wasn't just severe trauma. His system had gone into rejection. Without the precise intervention, pressure timing, fluid balance, neural stabilization, he would have died within minutes. No civilian protocol covered that. Only battlefield medicine did. Only mine did. "You saved more than a life," he said. "You saved a program." I closed my eyes, and there it was, the twist. This wasn't about a nurse overstepping. This was about the military realizing they'd never really let me go. "Why now?" I asked. "Why expose me?" "We didn't," he said. "The hospital did by questioning you." I understood then. Their internal review, their paperwork, their need to protect themselves. They'd triggered a deeper audit, and the audit pulled on threads no one there even knew existed. By noon, my leave status changed. Not from the hospital, from Washington. Federal Medical Liaison, temporary assignment. Temporary, I knew that word. Black SUVs showed up an hour later. Neighbors watched from behind curtains as two uniformed officers stepped out, not combat, not dress. Something in between. One of them smiled when he saw me. "Still limping," he said. "Still talking too much," I replied. He laughed, then turned serious. "You're being requested, not ordered." Requested was a courtesy. Inside the SUV, they briefed me. The story was already shifting. Not mysterious nurse. Now it was former combat medic saves experimental soldier. The hospital administration, scrambling, they hadn't just benched a nurse. They'd sidelined a federal asset. When we arrived at the base medical facility, I felt it, the hum, the precision, the controlled chaos that made sense to me in a way civilian life never quite had. Doctors stood straighter when I passed, not because of rank, because they'd read the file. I was ushered into a conference room. Screens lit up with data from the soldier I'd treated. "He's stable," a doctor said. "Because of you." I nodded once. Then another screen came on, my hospital, footage from the ER, from the hallway, from the office where administration questioned me. Audio included, every dismissive word, every doubt, every policy excuse. The commander's voice was calm. "They're asking us how to proceed." "With what?" I asked. "Your status." And theirs. That was when the power shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. "They want you back," he continued, "publicly as a consultant. They want to apologize." I leaned back in the chair. All those years I'd tried to be invisible, all that effort to shrink, and now they wanted me front and center. "No," I said. The room went still. "No," the commander repeated. "I don't want apologies," I said. "I want accountability." Silence. I pointed at the screen showing the ER footage. That culture almost killed someone, not just him. "Me too." A long moment passed. Then the commander nodded. "Understood." That afternoon, the hospital received a notice, not a request, a directive. A full federal review of emergency response protocols and staff conduct, triggered by a near failure involving protected military personnel. And my name, listed not as a subject, but as a key witness. By evening, the news cycle flipped again. "Hospital under federal review after questioning decorated combat medic." Decorated. They finally used the word. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. Grounded, like the ground had finally stopped moving under my feet. That night, alone in a temporary quarters room, I stared at my reflection in the mirror. Same limp, same tired eyes. But something had changed. I wasn't running anymore, and the people who underestimated me, they were about to learn the difference between silence and weakness. Revenge doesn't always come with anger. Sometimes it comes with paperwork. I learned that my first morning back at the hospital, but this time I didn't walk in through the employee entrance. I walked in with credentials. Federal credentials. The lobby felt smaller than I remembered. Same marble floors, same front desk. Same security guards who used to wave me through without looking up. Now they stood straighter. One of them swallowed hard when he saw the badge clipped to my jacket. "Good morning, ma'am," he said. Ma'am, that word hit harder than any apology ever could. I nodded once and kept walking. The administration had been notified only an hour earlier. That was intentional. No time to rehearse, no time to spin. The directive was clear. Federal medical oversight audit, immediate cooperation required. I wasn't there to yell. I wasn't there to embarrass anyone. I was there to watch. The conference room filled quickly. Executives, legal counsel, department heads, even the chief surgeon who had once yanked my arm and told me to stay in my lane. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The lead auditor, a woman with steel gray hair and a voice like cold water, began calmly. "We're here due to a near-fatal incident involving protected military personnel and allegations of misconduct toward a federally recognized combat medical specialist." Every head turned toward me. I didn't smile, I didn't frown, I just sat there. The auditor continued. "This review will examine staff conduct, emergency response delays, and internal disciplinary decisions made in the last 72 hours. She clicked a remote. Footage appeared on the screen. Not edited. Not softened. Raw, the moment I'd been stopped in the hallway, the eye rolls. The comments about my limp, the order to wait outside. You could hear it all. The room grew heavy. The nurse supervisor shifted in her chair. The chief surgeon's jaw tightened. I remembered how small I'd felt standing there that night, how close I'd been to walking away. Now I watched it like it belonged to someone else. The auditor paused the video. "Who authorized this?" she asked. No one answered. "I'll rephrase," she said. "Who made the decision to delay treatment?" A hand went up, the chief surgeon. "I did," he said, "based on protocol," the auditor nodded. "Which protocol denies immediate care during a cardiac destabilization?" He hesitated. I could almost see the calculation in his eyes, the years of authority crashing into a single recorded mistake. "There was confusion about her role," he said, gesturing toward me. "She was listed as a night nurse." "And?" the auditor asked. "And not credentialed for what?" the auditor interrupted. "Saving a life." Silence. Then she turned to me. "Would you like to explain your qualifications for the record?" I stood. Every eye followed me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't list medals. I spoke plainly. I was a combat trauma medic for 11 years, deployed 6 times, specialized in prolonged field care under fire. The procedures I performed that night are not taught in civilian hospitals because civilians don't face those conditions. I paused. "But soldiers do." The auditor nodded slowly. "Thank you." I sat back down. That was it. No speeches, no drama, just truth. The review moved fast after that. Too fast for anyone to hide. Staff interviews, badge logs, time stamps. Every delay documented, every dismissal noted. By midday, the mood shifted. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about them. The hospital's legal counsel leaned in, whispering urgently to administrators. The nurse supervisor was escorted out for a private interview and didn't return. I watched all of it with a strange calm. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about hurting them. It was about forcing them to see what they'd done. Later that afternoon, I was asked to step into a separate office. Inside were 2 people from Joint Medical Command and the auditor. "We're offering you a choice," the commander said. I raised an eyebrow. "I like choices." "You can remain a consultant," he said. "Low visibility, advisory only." "And the other option?" "You come back," he said. "Publicly, lead role, training, oversight." I exhaled slowly. Coming back meant exposure. It meant the whispers would follow me. It meant no more hiding behind scrubs and night shifts. "And the hospital?" I asked. The auditor answered. "We'll implement mandatory retraining. Leadership changes, oversight, or lose federal partnerships." I nodded. They weren't getting away clean, but I wanted more than punishment. I wanted change. "I'll come back," I said. "On one condition." They waited. "I train them," I said, "not from a podium, on the floor, in real scenarios, and they listen." The commander smiled faintly. That was already in the draft. By evening, the announcement went out. Decorated combat medic appointed emergency response training, lead following federal review. The same hospital that had sidelined me was now required to follow my instruction. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. As I walked out that night, the same hallway felt different, not because people moved aside, but because they watched, listened, measured their words. The nurse who once laughed at my limp avoided my gaze entirely. The chief surgeon stood stiff near the elevator, hands clasped behind his back. "Doctor," I said as I passed. He flinched slightly. "Ma'am," I stopped, looked at him. "You were good," I said, "skilled, confident, but confidence without humility kills people." His face tightened. "I won't forget that," he said quietly. "Good," I replied. "Neither will I." Outside, the sun was setting. I felt tired, but not weak. The setup was complete, not vengeance born of rage, but justice built brick by brick. And the final reckoning, it was coming. The confrontation didn't happen all at once. It unfolded over days, slow, unavoidable, like pressure building in a sealed room. My first official day as emergency response training lead began at 600. No ceremony, no speech, just a schedule posted on the board, mandatory attendance, every department, ER, OR, ICU. Administration. That alone caused panic. They expected lectures. They got simulations. By 6:30, the trauma bay was transformed. Mannequins wired to fail in unpredictable ways. Monitors set to glitch. Alarms programmed to contradict each other. Chaos controlled but real. I stood at the edge of the room, arms crossed, watching. "Scenario 1, I said calmly. "Multiple system failure. Patient non-compliant. Unknown history." I nodded at the chief surgeon. "Your lead." His eyes flicked to me, then to the room. "Understood." The drill started. Within minutes, cracks showed. Orders overlapped. Nurses hesitated. Someone waited for confirmation that never came. The mannequin's vitals plummeted. "Why aren't we moving?" I asked, voice steady. "We're following protocol," someone snapped. "Protocol is a guideline," I replied, "not a lifeline." The mannequin flatlined. Silence filled the room. I stepped forward and stopped the clock. "Patient's dead," I said. "Again." No one argued. I reset the scenario again and again. Each time the same hesitation, the same reliance on hierarchy instead of action. Finally, I stepped in mid-scenario. "Stop," I said. Everyone froze. I walked to the center of the room. "On the battlefield," I said quietly, "we don't have perfect information. We don't have time. We have seconds, and we move anyway." I looked directly at the chief surgeon. "You pulled rank that night," I said, "and it almost killed someone." The room went still. This wasn't private anymore. This was the confrontation they'd all been avoiding. He straightened. "You're saying my authority was the problem." "I'm saying your ego was," I replied. A sharp intake of breath echoed from someone behind me. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. "Authority doesn't save lives," I continued. "Adaptability does." I turned to the nurse supervisor, recently reinstated pending review. "You laughed," I said, "because you thought weakness looks like a limp." Her face flushed. "That limp," I said evenly, "comes from carrying wounded soldiers through fire." She swallowed hard. No one defended her. The auditor watched from the corner, arms folded, expression unreadable. I restarted the scenario. "This time," I said, "you listen to whoever has the answer. Rank doesn't matter." The drill began again. Something shifted. A junior nurse spoke up and wasn't shut down. A resident made a call without waiting. The chief surgeon hesitated, then nodded. They moved. The mannequin stabilized. I stopped the clock. "Patient lives," I said. Relief rippled through the room. But I wasn't done. Later that day, administration called a meeting. Closed door, legal present. They wanted to clear the air. I sat across from them, hands folded. The hospital director cleared his throat. "We'd like to address how you were treated." I tilted my head. "Go on." He chose his words carefully. "Mistakes were made." "That's a passive sentence," I said. "Who made them?" A pause. "The institution," he said. I leaned forward slightly. "Institutions don't roll their eyes." "People do." The legal counsel shifted uncomfortably. I wasn't angry. I was precise. "I don't need apologies," I said. "I need assurance." "Of what?" the director asked. "That this never happens again," I said. "Not to me, not to the next nurse who doesn't look the part." Silence stretched. Finally, the director nodded. "We'll comply with every recommendation." I met his gaze. "You'll do more than comply." I slid a folder across the table. Inside were revised protocols, mine, flattened hierarchies in emergencies. Mandatory cross-training, immediate override authority based on expertise, not title. "And one more thing," I added. They waited. "You will document this incident," I said, "publicly, as a failure." "And a lesson." The legal counsel opened his mouth. The auditor raised a hand. "Approved." That settled it. The final confrontation came that evening. I was packing up when the chief surgeon approached. Alone this time. "I owe you," he said quietly. I looked at him. "You owe the patients," he nodded. I was wrong. That was harder for him than any reprimand. "I didn't see you," he admitted. I studied him for a moment. "Most people don't," I said, "until it's too late." He swallowed. "Thank you for not destroying us." I shrugged slightly. "Destruction is easy, change is harder." As he walked away, I felt something loosen inside my chest. Not forgiveness, closure. That night as I left the hospital, I noticed something small, a new sign near the ER entrance. "In emergencies, speak up. Lives depend on it." I didn't put it there, they did. The confrontation was over. The truth had been spoken, out loud in the open where it couldn't be ignored. All that remained now was the ending. The last helicopter didn't land for an emergency. It landed for closure. 3 weeks after the review, after the retraining, after the headlines cooled and the hospital found its new rhythm, I was on a late shift again. By choice this time. Night had always been quieter, honest, fewer egos, fewer eyes trying to decide who you were worth listening to. I was charting when the windows began to tremble, not violently, respectfully. That low, unmistakable thrum, every head in the ER lifted. Someone whispered, "Is that?" "Yes," I said softly, "that's an army bird." 2 of them touched down on the helipad, clean, precise, no rush. This wasn't chaos, this was intention. Staff gathered near the windows, watching as uniformed soldiers stepped out, not rushing, not shouting. Calm, controlled. One of the nurses looked at me. Is something wrong? I shook my head. No. The automatic doors slid open. A colonel entered first, then a medic team, then a soldier walking under his own power, still pale, still healing. The one from that night? The room went completely silent. He spotted me across the ER, and he stopped, every step deliberate. Then, slowly, carefully, he raised his hand and saluted, not casually. Formally, perfect, the sound of his palm hitting his brow echoed in the quiet. Angel 6, he said, permission to report stable. I felt my throat tighten. Permission granted, I replied. Behind him, the colonel stepped forward. We wanted to thank you, he said, not as a unit, not as a command. He gestured around the ER. But as people who are alive because someone refused to be invisible. He turned to the staff. This woman didn't just save a soldier, he said. She reminded us what courage looks like when it's quiet. No one spoke. They didn't need to. The helicopters lifted off minutes later, fading into the night like they'd never been there. But something stayed behind. A shift, not in policy, in perspective. Later, after the ER returned to its usual hum, I stepped outside. The night air was cool, clean. I leaned against the railing, easing the weight off my leg. I thought about the girl I'd been years ago, dragging med kits through dust and smoke, never thinking about recognition. Just survival. I thought about the woman I'd tried to become afterward, small, silent, careful not to take up space. And I realized something. Strength doesn't disappear when you stop wearing a uniform. It just waits. The hospital changed after that, not overnight, but meaningfully. People listened faster, questioned less, looked twice before dismissing someone. New nurses spoke up. Junior doctors trusted their instincts. And when someone limped down the hallway, no one laughed. They wondered what story they didn't know yet. On my last official day as lead, the auditor stopped by. You could stay, she said. Make this permanent, I smiled. Hospitals aren't battlefields, she studied me. But they need people like you. They need people willing to listen, I replied. I just reminded them. She nodded, understanding. I went back to night shifts after that. Same scrubs, same badge. Different weight, not lighter, truer. Sometimes new staff ask about the helicopters. Sometimes they ask about the nickname. I tell them the truth. It's just a call sign, I say. Means someone trusted me once. And sometimes when the night is quiet and the monitors beep steady, I catch my reflection in the glass, still limping, still tired, still standing. They mocked the injured night nurse. They thought silence meant weakness. They thought humility meant smallness. They were wrong because real power doesn't announce itself. It shows up when everything's on the line. And it saves lives even when no one's looking. Never underestimate the quiet ones. Never judge strength by appearances. And never forget, the people who save lives don't always wear the titles you expect.